समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा?
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Prime Minister Modi was at the Somnath temple this past week as the day marked 1,000 years since the first attack on the temple. The Prime Minister, while speaking at the Somnath Mandir, invoked foreign invaders and those who had stood up to those attacks. History and the debate around India's civilizational history has always informed modern day conversations. Sometimes it fiercely polarizes the conversation, dividing left against right. How do we have a conversation about history without corroding the present? Well, in the backdrop of what happened this past week at the Somnath Mandir, a new book attempts to do precisely that. Called The Decline of the Hindu Civilization and written by senior IAS officer Shashi Ranjan Kumar, the book says that this is about lessons from the past, not about revenge. The book, provocatively titled The Decline of the Hindu Civilization, talks about how India was clearly a civilization well before the awakening of 19th century nationalism. There's a lot that's very interesting in the book. It has blurbs from those across the spectrum, from Shashi Tharoor to Sanjeev Sanyal. It is a very, very interesting and informative read. And I want to welcome to the program now the author of the book, who's also, of course, in his other life, a senior IAS officer at the UPSC. Shashi Ranjan Kumar is with us. Thank you and namaskar, sir. Let me start by congratulating you on your book. It's a timely week for us to be having this conversation as Prime Minister Modi was at the Somnath Mandir, also talking about India's civilizational history and foreign invaders and talking about those who stood up to this attempt to basically corrode the civilizational history of our country. But I want to start with the operative sort of premise of the book and the operative argument of the book. And the operative argument of the book is to challenge those who say that India was born post-colonialism and that India was born as a result of a 19th century nationalist awakening. And in fact, if we can have the slides up, that quote from your book, आप कहते हैं that there would be no India today without the idea of Bharatvarsh. And आप ये भी कहते हैं that the constitution actually recognizes the ancient roots of our country by saying Bharat and India are both interchangeable names for our republic. So I want you to talk a little bit about this, because यहीं से आपकी book की central argument शुरू होती है. Because if you are on the other side of this debate, which says that India was only organized as an entity, as a reaction to the colonial invasion, then the book's premise falls. But आप तो ये कह रहे हैं कि this is predated the colonialists. It's predated, in fact, the arrival of the British. So sir, उसी से शुरू करते हैं, बताइए.
Good evening, Barkha ji, and let me first thank you for giving me this opportunity to be on your show, and thank you for congratulating me on my new book. So, as you rightly pointed out, in one of the chapter, I dedicated one full chapter on this issue, the idea of Bharat. The people talk about idea of India, therefore I decided that I will name this chapter idea of Bharat. And the central argument in that chapter is that the idea of India is a reinvention of old idea of Bharat. Contrary to many intellectuals who posit that India, as you yourself said, was invented during the national struggle. Now, I just want to explain one thing. Nation, nationhood, nationalities, these are modern terms. Of course, in true sense of the term, whether a country or civilization before modernity cannot be called really a nation or a nationhood, because the concept itself is a very modern concept. But much of the ingredient for formation of nationhood was already present in the idea of it, Bharat. That's my central argument. And what is the main raw material for a nation? One is a geographical entity. That's a key component of a nation, geographical entity. And if you have read that chapter, you will see that the concept of Bharatvarsha, Jambu Deep, Aryavart has a long-standing history. And this history is not static; it is evolved over a period of time. Aryavart described in first time described in the Bodhayan Dharma Sutra and the Vasishtha Dharma Sutra, and then Aryavart described in Manu Samhita. They are all different. Similarly, but by the time we come to the Vishnu Puran, we have a very clear idea of this geographical entity called Bharat, that which extends south from the Himalaya and north of the seas. And that has since then almost remained constant.
So this is a very interesting sort of, in a way, the central thesis of your book, if I may call it that there is a clear and ancient idea of Bharat. There are references to it, that the concept of Bharatvarsh predates any idea of formal organized nationhood. So to those who argue, and you would have read those historians, to those who argue that before the British invaded India, there was no country called India, that this was sort of a series of unconnected kingdoms, and it was the nationalist movement's reaction to the assault of the British that organized India into a modern nation. What would you say?
Well, let's see. Go back to the Mauryan Empire. The Mauryan Bharat was, except the southern tip of our country, was all politically united by Ashoka. Again, second time during Gupta dynasty. Of course, Gupta Empire was not as large as Mauryan Empire, but yet a large part of India was united by the Gupta. And see, we have to understand that in 2000 years back, 1500 years back, when the transportation was very limited, very rudimentary form of transportation was there, governing a large country like India was not an easy thing. Not an easy thing. However, the concept of a single entity called Bharat was always there. And it was always the dream of any king to become Vijishu and establish his rule in whole of India. So if there was if it was not politically united, it was more because of the fact of prevailing circumstances which did not allow such a kingdom to exist for a very long period of time.
Right. Now, you also talk about how the relentless invasions that this ancient entity or idea or concept of Bharat faced, they weren't just the fall of political kingdoms, but they were the fall of knowledge systems. And one of the central themes of your book is what happened to Nalanda. The story of Nalanda is both a metaphor for your argument and a literal example. So let's talk about Nalanda. Let's talk about Nalanda and what it represents to you.
When Xuanzang visited Nalanda in 7th century, he finds a thriving community of 8,500 students and 1,500 teachers. And people are coming from all over Asia, even from far off Mongolia, from Indonesia, Malaysia, to study there. And at that point of time, they had some system of taking admission of students on basis of some interview or something, so that only 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 candidate was actually selected in Nalanda. And there were so many great minds working there. In fact, it is said that there was a great observatory in Nalanda. And Aryabhat at one point of time used to be the head of that institution of Nalanda. That was destroyed by Bakhtiyar Khilji round about 1200 CE. And Bakhtiyar Khilji not only destroyed Nalanda, he also destroyed Odantapuri. He also destroyed Bikramshila University and many more places in Bengal. And you will find that within 100 years of establishment of the Delhi Sultanate, the Delhi Sultanate was established in 1206 CE, and within almost 100 years of that, the Sultanate expands almost to the south, barring a very small portion of the south. And all the institutions which used to support intellect, support education, like Math, like Bihars, some individual lay persons, or kings used to be great patron of knowledge. All these institutions were either destroyed or they declined because of want of patronage. तो पैसा खत्म हो गया, पैट्रोनेज उनको बंद हो गया, पैट्रोनेज बंद होने से उनका अवसान हो गया. So that is how Nalanda, as you rightly picked up, I set it as a metaphor for decline of knowledge system. But one thing came to my mind, which I have written in my book, that India is a country, I'm talking Bharat. Bharat was not united by foot drill of marching army, but footprints of moving pilgrims. So just see how our ancestors have created this network of pilgrims. You know, in the four places, the four Badri, Kedar, Rameshwaram, Dwarka, 4 corners of the country, Kunds, then Shakti Peeths, 52 Shakti Peeths, and pilgrims from all across the country braving climate, braving distances. And at that point of time, you can imagine what kind of law and order situation must have been there, because distances were so. They used to come from southern end to the northern end. They used to go from northern end of the country to southern end of the country. Scholars, you will be amazed how scholars used to travel from Kashmir to Kanyakumari in search of patronage from east to west. So I see this was an empire of knowledge. This was a civilizational entity, an empire of knowledge, not united so much by politics, but by knowledge.
Where would that idea exist when looked at through the lens of modern nationhood? I know you said just now that nationality and nationhood, these are very modern terms. But in a way, I think your analogies are with the Greek or the Roman empires. When you talk of the Hindu civilization that you believe declined, under the weight of invasions, you are actually comparing it perhaps to the other great civilizations that weren't necessarily measured by the benchmarks of modern nationhood.
It was geography, very clear idea. And this idea is so central to Indian imagination that even when Marathas are fighting in the third battle of Panipat with Ahmad Shah Abdali, what are they quibbling over? They are quibbling over where is the boundary of India in the west. And Marathas are saying, well, our boundary is Indus River. And Ahmad Shah Abdali is saying, no, your boundary is Chambal River. And they are fighting over that. Similarly, even during the Mughal Empire, when the attacks happened, again, Muhammad Shah Rangila constantly gives this argument that Indus is our natural border in the west. So everybody, in everybody's mind, there was complete clarity that the territory south of Himalaya and north of seas and east of Indus is the Indian territory. So that's one thing. Second thing is that we get confused because normally European nation and nationhood is premised on one unifying feature, either a language or an ethnicity, something like that, or religion. But this is lacking, so we believe that therefore how can we call it a nation? Okay. And it was not politically united, but it was united culturally. It was united civilizationally. That's my central argument of the book.
Now, before I come to other parts of the book, the week in which we are talking, the last few days, we have seen the Prime Minister at Somnath. And the Somnath Mandir, in many ways, the Prime Minister, while speaking there, invoked some of the ideas that you are making as well, referring to civilizational history, referring to foreign invaders. We're, of course, speaking in a week when it marks 1,000 years since the first attack. And Modi spoke about attempts made from Ghazni to Aurangzeb. Now, I want you to talk a little bit about how, when you see what unfolded in Somnath, how you reconcile that with some of the points you're making in your book.
I actually see the first invasion happens in 711 CE, actually, when Muhammad bin Qasim attacked Sindh. And that is the first time that the Arabs made certain incursions in Thane and Nepal, but they were more like coastal naval raids rather than full-fledged invasion. First invasion begins in 711 when Muhammad bin Qasim attacks Raja Dahir of Sindh, and Raja Dahir loses the battle. But thankfully, that Arab rule is confined to Sindh only and that too 100 years after the victory of Muhammad bin Qasim in 9th century. Al-Baladuri is coming to Sindh, and he is saying that much of the territories have been recaptured by the Hindus. And 300 years after that, now you have the invasion of Mahmud of Ghazni. And of course, the most celebrated, he made almost 17 attacks in India between 1001 CE and 1027 CE, round about that time. And the Somnath is the most, of course, remembered one.
Yeah.
So there's a series of invasions have taken place, which is gradually weakening the civilization, culminating finally in the Battle of 1192 in Battle of Tarai, when finally Muhammad Ghori defeats Prithviraj Chauhan and actually lays the foundation of Delhi Sultanate, because Mahmud was not so much interested in ruling over the country as much as he was interested in ruling from Ghazni and taking the wealth from here. So
the other constant and opening invocation in your book is to V.S. Naipaul's very famous book, India, A Wounded Civilization. And you talk about how it took you some time to understand what Naipaul meant. So what did Naipaul mean according to you?
I think that's a very good, profound question, Barkha. And actually, if anybody who reads the book, you would note that I am greatly influenced by his first two works on India, An Area of Darkness. It's a very scathing work.
Yes.
But you are actually shattered when you first go through that book. It almost, kind of, there is a churning within you that what you think and what Mr. Naipaul is telling is completely different. And we have all grown up reading the same books of history, basically.
Yes.
And in those big books of history and what Naipaul is presenting to us, there is a complete contrast. So I was inspired to go into primary sources. And it's an argument which is made by Naipaul. Go to the primary sources like Chachnama. I haven't even heard of word Chachnama. First time when I heard the word Chachnama, I was surprised. What does it mean? Later on, I came to know that there was a Chach dynasty. And the Chach, Raja Dahir of Sindh belonged to Chach dynasty. And therefore, this book was called Chachnama, which was written by an Arab historian. And then when I started going through Chachnama, and then later on Al-Utbi, Kitab-e-Amini, Al-Biruni's, Kitabul-Hind, then I kind of discovered that what has been told to us is completely different from the reading that I get from the primary sources. So then I started digging deeper into that. And at that point of time, it really stuck to me what actually Naipaul meant by a wounded civilization. He says that if you go anywhere in the country, you see ruins over ruins. Muslim ruins over Hindu ruins, Muslim ruins over Muslim ruins. So there was so much of destruction. So of course, it's a wounded civilization. There is no doubt about it.
But there have been other parts of the world, and you know this more than me, there have been other parts of the world who have also been ravaged by invasions and assaults and violence and war, have lost knowledge systems, have lost libraries and books and ancient texts. What do you think distinguishes India's civilizational history from, let's say, European civilizational history?
You were very right, because when when the Roman Empire fell, ultimately, but in their case, I have argued that invasion did not do as much damage as did Christianity, because if you I have in great detail explained this, that initially the church fathers and Christianity was very anti-intellectual. Very intellectual. When Constantine himself ordered burning of books, and burnings of books was celebrated by Christian fathers. And just as I have described Nalanda, similarly I have described Alexandria, how the great library of Alexandria was actually destroyed on the order of the Roman emperor. So here there is a little bit of difference. There it was Christianity itself which led to the destruction of Greco-Roman, if you can call it, knowledge system.
And here you also talk about the difference between monotheistic civilizations and polytheistic civilizations. And that is something very important to talk about, that when a monotheistic civilization is aligned with the state, which is how modern theocracies have been crafted, then knowledge suffers, the spirit of inquiry suffers. So talk a little bit about that.
In both these cases, in case of Islam and Christianity, this is historical. I mean, there is evidence for it. See, their argument is that once you know God, there is nothing more to know. So all the books are basically, knowledge is foolishness. That is why one of the church fathers said, knowledge is foolishness. When already we have the Lord, what do you want to know? There is nothing else to know. In case of polytheistic civilization, that is why I have specifically made this argument. It's not only because of India, even China, Japan, wherever there was polytheism or polytheistic society, you cannot find a single case of persecution of intellectuals. The persecution of intellectual is a specific feature of monotheism. It is not prevalent in polytheistic society. You cannot find example of persecution of intellectuals in ancient China, nor in ancient India, nor in ancient Japan. Because we believe in multiplicity of truth. We never said that this is the truth and you have to accept it.
So no singular truth, no codified book, no singular truths.
Yes, no singular truth. No singular. You will be surprised. The story of an elephant and 5 blind men is repeated in Jaina text, in Buddhist text, in Hindu text, everywhere. Ekam satra vipra bahuda vadanti. The truth is one. Wise people say differently. You see something else. I see elephant. I see the trunk of elephant. You see the foot of the elephant. So everybody is seeing it differently. How can we say? Same was the case in Rome also. One of the last Roman senator, pagan, who was still pagan, is almost towards the end of 4th century. Almost the entire empire has now become Christian. And there are very few pagans. One of the last pagan important influential person is Symmachus, senator. And what he's saying? He's saying, we see the same star. We are under the same, we see the same sky. How does it make a difference if we say truth is like that or truth is like that? He makes such an important plea that truth is and he makes one more argument. He says that very clever, very, very fundamental point. All regions is shrouded in ambiguity. Very important point. All regions are shrouded in ambiguity. Therefore, it is very difficult to ascertain which is the best path. Therefore, the best possible thing is that your path is as good as mine path.
Yes, a more live and let live sort of intellectual culture. Now, I want to ask you, your book opens by saying that while it is about learning lessons from the past, your book is not about seeking revenge. It is not about bringing grievances to punish somebody today. Many people may say that every time we talk, we have a conversation like this one, where your book is about the decline of the Hindu civilization. How do you include India's Muslims who were not present in these times that you talk about? How do we make them part and parcel stakeholders in the conversation?
I think two things I will say, Barkha, which capture the essence of our civilization. One is that truth is in multiple, truth is plural, not singular. That is one thing.
Yes.
Second important thing, very important thing I have brought it out is that vade vade jayate tatbodha. What does it mean? Tattva is truth. How do you get to truth? Vade vade. By argument and counter argument, only you can get the truth. Okay. In the very beginning of the Nyaya Sutra written by Gautama, Gautama says that this debate is not only the purpose of I am not doing debate with Barkha to score simple debating points that I will win the debate. That's not the point of debate. In Indian tradition, Vad is not for that purpose. Vad has a specific purpose for reaching that truth. तत्वबोध की तरफ जाना है, सत्य की तरफ जाना है, उसके लिए वाद है. वाद लड़ाई करने के लिए नहीं है. तो ये दो चीजें यहाँ का फंडामेंटल है. तो जो भी इसको अपना सकता है, जो ये कहे कि भाई सच जो है वो सिंगुलर नहीं प्लूरल है, और सच की तरफ बढ़ने के लिए, सच को प्राप्त करने के लिए हम विवाद और विमर्श से बढ़ सकते हैं आगे. यही यहाँ का दो एसेंस. इसको जो भी मान लेगा वो यहाँ का है.
That's very beautifully put, I must say. सर, मैं अंत में पूछना चाहती हूँ आपसे.
एक सेकंड में आपको वो संस्कृत में आपको
बताइए.
तत्वार्थ अनुसंधान अर्थो, मैं एक्सप्लेन भी कर दूंगा आपको. तत्वार्थ अनुसंधान अर्थवाद. तत्व अर्थ, तत्व के अर्थ के अनुसंधान के लिए वाद है. ये डिबेट का पर्पस है ना. मंडन मिश्र और आदि शंकरा के बीच में जब वाद हो रहा है, तो वाद के बाद अंत में मंडन मिश्र अंत में जब हार जाते हैं, और जो उसमें जज मंडन मिश्र की पत्नी है, वही है, वह भारती है जज उसकी. शी इज द जज, एंड फाइनली शी डिसाइड दैट नो, मंडन मिश्र हैज लॉस्ट द डिबेट. तो उसके बाद क्या होता है? ये नहीं कि हमने डिबेट करके फिर टीवी से उठ करके हम चले गए. डिबेट के बाद में मंडन मिश्र एक्चुअली पूर्व मीमांसा दर्शन के अनुयायी थे, और शंकर जो है वो अद्वैत वेदांत के अनुयायी थे, मतलब जनक थे अद्वैत वेदांत के. तो फाइनली उन्होंने पूर्व मीमांसा को छोड़ करके मंडन मिश्र ने इनका अद्वैत वेदांत अपना लिया. जी, ये मेरा ये दो चीजें जो है मैंने कहा है कि ये तो हमारा एसेंस है, हमारी सभ्यता का ये एसेंस है, बिल्कुल सार है ये. इस सार को जो अपनाएगा वो ही का है.
अब आप ये बताएं कि आपकी किताब व्हाइल इट लुक्स एट द डिक्लाइन ऑफ द हिंदू सिविलाइजेशन, उसके बाद जो सब टाइटल जिसको कहते हैं, इट सेज लेसन्स फ्रॉम द पास्ट. सो माय लास्ट क्वेश्चन टू यू इज, what are these lessons from the past that today's India, that today's Bharat must learn?
देखिए, लास्ट में मैंने जाके लिखा है कि there were many reasons for our defeats. In some degree or other, everything mattered. What mattered was that there was, of course, political fragmentation of the country. That was a factor. ठीक है. And technology was a factor. Military organization was a factor. And you are very well versed in the matter of defense and strategic affairs. ठीक है. आप दो तीन चीजें जरा देखिए गौर से. एक तो कि पूरे 1000 साल का जो फर्स्ट मिलेनियम है कॉमन एरा में, आई हैव फाउंड दैट व्हाइल वी attained great heights in fields of mathematics, astronomy, aesthetics, erotics, ठीक है, name any field. We really did not create any superior technology for warfare. Very important. At that point of time, horses were a very important part of warfare. We were not able to breed good quality horses. We used to import them from Arabia or Central Asia. Huge amount of money used to go out of the country for importing horses. Still we are importing weapons.
Yeah.
Is it not true? Second thing, we always fought defensive wars. Five battles I have specifically chosen in my book. Five
Yes.
battles. Battle of Jhelum, Battle of Tarai, First Battle of Panipat, Battle of Palasi, Battle of Asai. All battles with our foreigners have been fought on Indian territory. Never have been able to take the battles into enemy's camp. It is correct or not correct? है ना? यही है ना? So defensive. There is a defensiveness about it. Third thing is that this is most crucial point. उसके बाद एक और सुपर मतलब मेटा नैरेटिव में आऊंगा। ये पॉइंट है ये कि कभी भी हम जो ये हमारा जो ये चकमा जिसे कहते हैं ना वॉर में, वॉर सुंजू कहते हैं, सुंजू का कहना है ऑल वॉर इज बेस्ड ऑन डिसेप्शन।
यस,
है ना, सुंजू का एक कोट है, ऑल वॉर इज बेस्ड, सारा कुछ। और कौटिल्य के अर्थशास्त्र में भी कूट युद्ध की बात कही गई है, बट कौटिल्य के अर्थशास्त्र का कूट युद्ध और तुस्लिम युद्ध को हम बाद में भूल ही गए। और आप देखेंगे कि हर बार चाहे झेलम चकमा दे करके अलेक्जेंडर झेलम पार करके इस पार आ गया, जब तभी राजा पोरस को पता लगा कि उसकी आर्मी आ चुकी है। बैटल ऑफ तराई में पृथ्वीराज चौहान की सेना सुबह में सो ही रही थी, एकदम अर्ली मॉर्निंग प्री डॉन था, उन पर आक्रमण हो गया। ठीक है, आक्रमण होने के बाद में वो तो तैयार ही नहीं थे। मेनी ऑफ द सोल्जर्स हैड गॉन आउट फॉर आंसरिंग द कॉल ऑफ नेचर।
या
सो एवरी टाइम विल फाइंड आई कैन गिव यू बैटल आफ्टर बैटल, बैटल आफ्टर बैटल, ठीक है, वेयर वी हैव बीन आउटविटेड बाय द एनिमीज।
जिसको कहते हैं कनिंग, एक कनिंग चाहिए होती है।
या और आप ये आश्चर्यचकित हो जाएंगे कि इन कौटिल्य अर्थशास्त्र his strategic and diplomatic vocabulary is full of this word outwitting. This outwitting word is repeatedly mentioned in Arthashastra of Kautilya. So, but for the want of time, I will not. I would have explained much more.
No, you can explain. You can explain just this last point on Kautilya's Arthashastra. Yes.
Okay. So what happens is that if you go to 3rd to 5th century, that is pre-Gupta period, Arthashastra is very popular, particularly in North India.
Yes.
Immediately thereafter, in the post-Gupta period, you will find that its popularity declines very rapidly. And what happens is that Manabhat, who is in the court of Harshavardhan, and they start saying that describing Kautilya as an immoral science. And I have made this argument during launch of my book that a wholly pragmatic and autonomous, the word is autonomous, science of Artha was gradually subordinated to Dharma. And you will be surprised that in 14th century, when Pandit Chandeswar is writing in Mithila, Rajniti Ratnakar, he is still saying the same things that this is our. I will just read one or two lines, if you permit me.
Please.
कि वो कह रहे हैं कि योद्धा का सनातन धर्म क्या है? तो योद्धा का सनातन धर्म ये है कि ये युद्ध में जिसके पास शस्त्र नहीं है उसको नहीं मारना चाहिए, ठीक है, जो शत्रुओं से घिर चुका है उसको नहीं मारना चाहिए। तो 14वीं शताब्दी में जबकि दिल्ली सल्तनत पूरे भारत में करीब करीब फैल चुका है, तभी राजनीति रत्नाकर में पंडित चंडेश्वर जो है ये धर्म और सनातन धर्म क्या होना चाहिए योद्धा की, इसकी बात कर रहे हैं। जबकि उस समय जरूरत ये थी कि अर्थशास्त्र की जो कौटिल्य की नीति थी उसको वहां पे लागू होना चाहिए था।
जी जी।
और एक लास्ट पॉइंट जो मैं आपको बताना चाहूंगा, ये सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है, और ये मैंने किताब में इंट्रोडक्शन में भी लिखा है और कंक्लूजन भी मैंने ये लिखा है इसके ऊपर, कि वी नेवर देयर इज नो इंडियन इक्विवेलेंट ऑफ मेगास्थनीज, Ibn Battuta, Xuanzang. There are people who are going for trade, there are people who are going for as missionaries, there are people who are going for as astronomers, scientists, that's all right. But nobody is going as a geographer or as an explorer to give accounts of foreign society. We are not really knowing about foreign society, what they are up to. ठीक है? Lack of intelligence, very important. ठीक है? That's you see, in modern world, कौटिल्य के शास्त्र में स्पाई का इतना बड़ा एक जाल है बना हुआ है।
जी जी।
पूरे अर्थशास्त्र में कैसे आपको स्पाई किस किस चीजों के लिए होने चाहिए, टैक्स इवेजन के लिए होने चाहिए, दुश्मनी के बारे में जानने के लिए होना चाहिए। सो लास्ट चैप्टर आई हैव गिवन, इफ यू डोंट नो योर एनिमी, एंड दिस इज अगेन ए कोट फ्रॉम सुंजू, इफ यू नो योर एनिमी एंड नो योरसेल्फ, यू विल नेवर लूज ए बैटल। If you know your enemy, if you know yourself but don't know your enemy, for every battle you will win, you will lose a battle. And if you don't know yourself and don't know your enemy, then every battle you will lose.
Well, these are very instructive words for the times we live in. We also live in a very turbulent age. I will, in the end, Shashi, only congratulate you on your book, and also, of course, remind everybody of that oft-repeated phrase, if you do not learn from history, you are condemned to repeat it. And I think that is something that your book really is wanting to get across.
My third quote is from the philosopher Soren Kierkegaard. And I quoted him, life can be understood backwards, can only be understood backward, but it must be lived forwards.
That's an excellent note to close on. The decline of the Hindu Civilization, Lessons from the Past by Shashi Ranjan Kumar is now out there for any of you to pick up a copy. We hope this conversation inspires you to do that. Thank you, sir, for talking to us, and really congratulations on this deeply researched and argued book. Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.